Thank you all for coming. So welcome to the second part of the Christian Chefs International Conference, 4th Annual. So we have Kerr joining us again for a second year in a row. And he is going to show us an amazing soup invention of his that we are looking forward to.
Okay. You've got to make sure that I don't blow everybody up. But,
like that.
This is what I always dreamed would happen on television. You know, when you start something and nothing doesn't work, and then the audience just loves it. Thank you. Fine. Let me give you the background to this idea. I have a youngest daughter, my beloved here. This is my wife Trina, who has produced 1,800 television shows that I've done in my life. So she who is to be obeyed. At the very beginning she said about me that you are the most boring, actually she said in real words, you're the most unutterably boring man in the entire world. This was an early start of television in 1960. By the way, Julia Child said to me once, where did you start on television? And I said, 1960. No, I was first, she said. I said, no, actually you weren't. I started in New Zealand. Oh, that doesn't count. So the idea was that I would leap over chairs with a glass of wine and tell jokes before I cooked, which I thought would disenfranchise me from any professional who was watching the show. How could you trust a guy like that? So I worked really hard at doing my portion of the program properly. I had 16 minutes, Trina had the rest. So I would play the fool and then I would be into the thing itself. So that's my background, and that's the only reason I'm here today, because I was told to be foolish in public, and I have never given it up, especially when she's in the audience. So we have a young daughter whose name is Karina, and Karina went through one very difficult marriage and into another one. She knows and loves the Lord, and she has 2 great kids and a wonderful husband who we were able, I think, to lead to the Lord. They have not done well financially. They live in Tennessee, and we've helped them from time to time, but they really did not want us to continue to help them. They said, we've got to do this on our own, and we really honor them for that. So what I did, because you know it's what I can do, was I sent them a soup recipe, something that they could do as a family, that they would pre-do in bulk, and then actually freeze it up into bite-sized pieces that they could do. And I wanted to do it so that I would give them a variety of things that they could make with it. So a lot of different additions. And I wanted to make sure that every meal would be both healthy and under $2 per head. Now I happen to be involved today, as many of you are, I know, with cooks in school kitchens. And this is one of the dishes that we've tested out already for what we call the eco lunch, or the ecology and nutrition. It's called eco nut. And we're telling them that if they want to be eco nuts, then they can take this soup with this bread and this cheese and this milk and this piece of fruit, and that can be their lunch, and see what they think about it. And we've got various kinds of whole grains and seasonings that they can add to that. It's a variation on a theme. And so far the only thing that's getting in the way is the union. The union doesn't much like the idea of us coming in with something with so much handwork. As you can see, this is a lot of handwork. And they're not used to handwork. They're used to ripping the tops off packages and turning it into something else. But we're trying to get to whole food from the local environment and bring it into the school. So let me show you how this actually works. It's quite simple. There's a heated pan here, a little olive oil. And by the way, in my testing, I have found out that for every 2 ounces or quarter cup in a recipe of olive oil, a teaspoonful will do. You can actually saute onions perfectly from a flavor point of view with a teaspoon instead of a quarter of a cup. And that is a tremendous difference right off the top. I know it's good fat, but at the same time it is still fat and it's still calories, it's still high. Every one of these dishes that I have here today, the whole soup, turns out to be at about 150 to 190 calories. So it's a lot of food for very little. This is now smoking. All right, to this I want to add a little garlic first of all, a little grated ginger, and some sweet onions. Now, when you add those 3 things together, can anyone tell me whether you can get the classic Chinese statement on this one about what this is called? Anyone? It's called Bao for explosion, and Xiang means fragrance. So what you've got here is Bao Xiang means explosion of fragrance. And what's happening is with the oil releasing now that garlic and ginger and onion, we should start to smell it already in the room. I've actually had a 30,000 square foot room responding from the back within about 2 minutes to this. Now, it doesn't matter whether this is a stir fry, whether it's a pilaf, whether it's a soup or stew or whatever, this underlying fragrance is a tremendous first kicker-upper of flavor. And you can even take canned soups and do this first in the pan and put the canned soup on the top, and it robs the canned soup of its canned flavors. So, can you begin to start to smell it now?
Yes.
Or it's clearing my passages. You can't have sinus and do this. So that's... Now, what we've done is all of the vegetables here have been peeled, and this is the peeling from what will be 50 portions of this soup tonight. So this is 50 portions full of peeling. Now, we took a large amount of this out already and had it in a pot and made a very quick 20-minute vegetable stock out of that. So we're not using water, we're just using the peelings. Then after this has been done, that goes into a compost. It's perfectly okay, it's good fibrous material, and it's great from a compost point of view.
And it's been washed first,
I'm sorry?
It's been washed first.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, everything was washed before it was peeled, and then everything's been boiled. So little things really haven't got much of a chance. By the way, thank you for raising that. I too have washed. I wrote to all of my colleagues who do television programs when I was the chairman of the Home Food Safety Committee for the United States. And I wrote to 117 television presenters. And I said, please, would you wash your hands on camera before you start? Just as an introduction, when you're doing that, just go through the motion. Just really wash your hands before you start. Because if you do that, it's going to send an amazing message out over millions of people that you would take the time to do it. Nobody did it. And nobody responded to it. So it's just part and parcel of the course. I'm going to be talking later about earning respect. If we do the right thing, then I am strongly of the opinion that people recognize that and your value as an individual goes up. As a Christian individual, if your value goes up in the world, you have a greater opportunity as a testament. Okay? So, we'll take this now, and this has been the start of this. So we'll get that now that the volatile oils have been released, we'll get that into the saucepan.
Into the soup?
Yeah, thank you. And a little bit more oil in there. Now, I put these in order of their degree of toughness. And I'm just going to go through the process of showing you this. We don't have enough time to go on forever. But I want to be able to get a little caramelization going on the root vegetables. Not only am I beginning to evaporate some of the moisture out of the thing, but I'm actually taking the sugars and I'm beginning to let them brown. That enforces, that deepens that wonderful flavor that you get from this. And if I was doing this from a school district point of view, I would have this done in trays of a degree of difficulty of the amount of time required, like the carrot and the turnip and the rutabaga, these three things. I would mix those together in trays, turn a little oil into that, and put that into a hot oven. About a 450 degree oven, and then occasionally pull that tray out and just turn it around. We'll get a degree of browning that way. It's a whole lot easier than it's going to be for the kitchen to be able to go through this process. But in a home kitchen, this actually works very well. You just ask people to take each one and give it the time that it needs, so that can go in. So then, so I have carrots and turnips. Now you can imagine if you're going to talk to the school district about this, and you say, you know, we need to cut this into half-inch dice. Well, for a start, I mean, really good knife work, the sort of knife work which you have to do this. By the way, thank you, students.
Yeah.
I mean, I digress, but let me tell you. I was, my father said to me before I was 18, and when you're 18 in British, you had to go for 2 years national service. You were just drafted, and no argument, you went in. And my dad said to me, because you've been in the kitchen since you were 14, which I had been, they're going to know about this one, and they're going to put you in the Army Catering Corps. And that, my son, is a fate worse than death. That was his attitude towards him. Because he'd seen what human beings can do to food, and they seem to wind up at their very worst in the British Army. In fact, the stuff that we did to food in the British Army was probably more dangerous than munitions. It's to say that if we fired Brussels sprouts at the enemy, they'd probably give up overnight. So I went down and I worked in a garage doing mechanical engineering for 6 months. And I wrote down that that's what I'd done just before going in. So they put me in the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers so that I could avoid the Army Catering Corps. Well, fast forward on this one, I actually wound up in a pan wash waiting for a course to be a radar mechanic of all things. And I worked in that pan wash for an 1,800-man kitchen with one other guy bashing pans for 6 months during a hot summer. And when I had finally lost my plum in the mouth accent, which I had in those days, the Sergeant Major says, "Are you ready now for something decent?" And I said, "Yes, sir." You know, I'd learned my lesson. So he said the officers' mess is having a party, and they want somebody who can cook. It's celebrate the 10th anniversary of the engineers. Will you do it? Oh yes, certainly. And I did it. There happened to be let's get that now. Get that in too, please. We just keep doing. Thank you, Jim. This is wonderful of you. Where have you been all my professional life?
Watching you on TV.
You should have broken through the screen. So, that's the rutabaga. So, who should be there but the chief of the catering advisor for that part of the British Army. He came to the kitchen and he said, when did you go through the hotel school, or through the school? And I said, I've never been through it. I went to a hotel school as a kid, but not here. Oh my God. He said, well, how would you like to be a corporal? I said, I'd like that very much. And he said, good, well, you're posted as a corporal chef instructor at the headquarters School of Cookery in St. It was just like that. I arrived and they said, you're in kitchen classroom number 1. And I said, okay, what are you teaching? And he said, Brunoise, Paysanne and Julienne garnishing. Why? You don't ask why, you go and do it, all right? I said, yeah, but I mean, these people need to know how to make a good brown stew and a rice pudding, for goodness sake, you know. I said, don't argue, go and do it. So I argued, hey, I was 19, and Denny's, by the way, at that stage, Denny's started their restaurant chain at the same time as I was arguing with the British Army about what they should teach in kitchen classroom number 1. So, the net result was I became a drill and weapon training instructor. So I taught people how to kill each other, you know, instead of just poison them slowly with the food. So when I look at this is what that whole story was about. By the way, if you're ever going to cook in public, you have to have a story you can tell whilst the thing is soaking, because you can't just look at it and, you know. So when this is so perfectly cooked, you would have won a prize in kitchen classroom number 1. This is very good knife work. And it's nice and even and lovely. Now, if you can't get it done that way in a school district, or wherever you are, then the answer to this is to puree this soup when it's been done. I wanted to have this so that you can see the individual pieces. Some kids love to see individual pieces. Other kids like it smooth. Some like it rough, others smooth. And so we provide 2 different soups, same soup, but one pureed and one else. And what I'm trying to get now is parents who say they're interested in their children's nutrition to join up as what we call movers and peelers instead of shakers, you know. We want movers and scrapers, I'm sorry. And we want them to wear these jumpers, you know, with movers, and come in and give 1 hour of peeling for their kids' sake. All right. Good. Now, that's the heavy stuff, and that's the stuff I wanted to get in there with a little smokiness in it. Thank you. And then, if you've been cooking some Swiss chard recently, I personally hate it when I get a piece of Swiss chard when the green is gone and so is the red. It's cooked and so the stalk is tender. By that time you've destroyed the green. So I always strip it and then chop the chard stalks separately. And I find if they go in about 10 minutes before it's finished, they will cook in the same way that celery does. Sorry. So I'm putting the celery and the chard at the same time. Now there is no point here in trying to pick up any kind of color. It's not going to do that. So that is now can be turned straight into the dish. I also leave the parsnips until the end. I find parsnips go very quickly. They become spongy and don't have a good texture to them. So the parsnips and the sweet potatoes we leave at the end. Now, I've got here the vegetable stock out the back. I have a certain amount of salt which is in there. We've done some bulgur wheat, some couscous, we've got some beans here out on the table. And the whole idea behind this is when the carrots are done, the rest of the ingredients should by then have come to an acceptable level of tenderness. It's all perfectly good. And all now giving up their qualities to each other. It really is a melting pot. Oh, I've got to tell you a quick story about this. I went to a large school in our area, and I had 20 kids who'd never handled a knife before, and 20 knives, and I was really worried about this one. And they had chopping boards, and we had all these vegetables, and we were cooking for 800 people. We were doing soup for 800. So these kids were, and I was told they were really good kids, and just really sharp and ready to go. So I gave them a little knife instruction and watched what they did. And one guy was going, with the knife like this. And I thought, this is one of those classic moments. I either wrap this guy up and tell him, stop playing with knives like this, it's a bad deal, which I could have done. But instead of that, I said to him, you seem to have a few moves. He said, yeah, man, I've got the moves. I said, so have I. And he said, oh, you got moves? And I said, yeah, I got moves. And I said, and I have a name for it. And what's that? He said, I said, it's called Charleston. And he said, well, what's a Charleston? I said, it's dun, 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 dun. I nearly killed myself. I wasn't going to let him win. He watched me like this, and he did it faultlessly. Every move I made, he did it. He was really good. The kids then wanted to do it, and we formed a chorus line, and I was going da 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 da, and they did a pretty good job. We had a hoot, and we laughed away together. Then we got down and made the soup for 800 people. And there were 8 different ethnic background kids in that group. So we became a melting pot of people making a melting pot of a recipe. It was a wonderful experience. Good, okay. In fact, because of time, I want to get this in. There we go. Lovely. Thank you. Very quick. Now, whenever you have something which has a suspiciously small amount of fat in it, this is literally a quarter of a cup of fat for the entire recipe that I've just done. So, when it's like that, and when it's cooked, do you know what happens? When you dish it up, it looks flat. Anything without fat in it looks flat. And you know, and I know what you do. You throw in, as the French would say, a beurre noisette, or a noisette of butter. A nice hunk of butter in there. Stir it in. Or maybe what we call the Tuscan roll with the olive oil. That sort of twice round the pan with the olive oil into the top, and then saute. Now it gleams, it reflects light back, and looks as if it's full of life instead of that, look that it has. I have been learning, because and she's given me permission to tell you this, I have malnourished Trina for 27 years. Malnourished. Now, and the net result of the total of that was a heart attack and a stroke and a triple heart bypass, and hypertension and diabetes. Come on, you guys. It adds up fast, especially in a family that has prone to heart disease, as hers does. So I didn't do this because I didn't like her. I did this because I thought that she loved it. And that's what we do with the industry. We do what we do well because we know that it's enjoyed. So if you put another half a pound of butter in something, they're going to like it better. Yeah. And if they like it better, they are going to come back again. Right? And if they come back again, you have succeeded. in the short term. But if you malnourish a person long enough, they get to suffer from it. And these people who we are now serving long enough in the industry are beginning now to suffer from it. And guess what? The nation is beginning to suffer from it. We can't afford to do this anymore. And we're not going to do it anymore. We're going to change the whole idea. And when we change the idea, we are going to have to go along and serve these people who want to change. So we have to know how to do it. So, in my considered judgment, I have now had 26 years of nourishing Trina. Yeah, I did 27 years. And Trina is now a year younger than I am, but my next birthday is 80. All right? And so when you think that she is now 15 years older than her oldest surviving parent, having gone through all of this with a 365 cholesterol, 11.9 A1C diabetic, hugely problematic hypertension and everything else, you know. All I'm trying to say to you, it is possible in the mid of life, having done it all wrong, for all the wrong reasons, to turn a corner and start doing it right. And that's when we started doing this because we turned a corner in the Lord. And literally, I do not think I would have been able to see it. You know, the scripture says if you've got eyes to see and ears to hear. But what happens when you don't have those? When you're just so self-interested and so up to your neck in the great flavors of the world, that half a pound of butter, you know, isn't a problem. And to go to a teaspoonful of oil instead seems ridiculous. And that's the problem with a new life. It does appear to some people to look ridiculous, but eventually the ridiculous becomes the normal. And we just happen to always have to be on the leading edge. If the Lord is the creator of all, He knows what is going wrong, and He knows what to do to fix it. And He knows who He will use to fix it, and that's us, guys. Sorry, but it is. That doesn't mean to say that registered dietitians are evil. They know exactly what needs to be there. They have knowledge for that, but we have knowledge and a heart for people as well. So that's important. Okay, so we've got that in the dish. And now it's going to be a question of whether it'll be ready for us in a few minutes, but let me show you what I want to do now. In order to get that crystalline appearance, I would normally use arrowroot. But arrowroot has become really expensive now. This is the wrong bowl. I'm not quite sure how much I need here, but I think we've probably got enough. I want to make a slurry. You know what that is. There's just simply a mixture of the starch and water together to form a light cream. Now, cornstarch will always, when it glazes, will always have a slightly opaque look to it. You've seen the cornstarch glazes on a peach tart, for example. The peach looks a little dull, as if it's almost greaseproof paper over the top of it. And so if you use arrowroot, it clears completely. It has no flavor, and it clears under the boil. So it doesn't even need to be boiled. With cornstarch, it needs to be boiled for 30 seconds, at least, in order to clear it. And then both starches have an unfortunate habit of clearing themselves out. They drop out after about 10-15 minutes. So this is a very last minute thing that one would do with this dish. So I want to add a little herb of Provence. I'm very interested, and I have a book here today for you called Swiftly Seasoned, in the various seasonings that go on around the world. In the herb of Provence, there are 9 different classic herbs that make up that mixture. And it's a very good example about actually what happens in different parts of the world. Different parts of the world have their favorite seasonings that they put together over time, And rather than just measure them out in a recipe as a little cinnamon and then the basil and then the thyme and whatever, it just looks like a very long list in a recipe, and it makes the recipe look difficult. But if you're just putting in 1 teaspoonful of an ethnic mixture, then it's a very acceptable thing to look at. So I've given you recipes to make up the essential flavors of 12 different parts of the world. And this is a good example of what that is like. So I'm going to add some of that to the soup as it finishes. And I'm going to test to make sure that the sodium is right. And then right at the last moment before we serve it up, when everything is just right tender, then I'm going to add the glaze to that so that we can put it out on a tray. And when you scrape that out and put that in the soup bowl, it should glisten back at you. A little parsley will be in there for a little bright green to come up through it. So that's, I mean, it's a perfectly ordinary soup, but there are a few techniques in being able to make it a little bit more than that. And I want to talk to you particularly later on tonight about how to be able to delight and do less harm. I spent some time with students here earlier on, and we talked about that at some length. We must delight. We cannot risk being dull with the food. Almost anybody, when they say something is healthy, say, oh yeah, but it must taste awful. That went round, and it wasn't actually far off the mark. When we started to do these sort of things, we started turning out perfectly awful food. And people would taste it and say, well, if this is it. In fact, I had a friend who said that you know, a low-fat diet needn't necessarily mean you'd last much longer. It just would seem like it. And really, you know, if you're going to do that to food, why bother? Why not just go out in a blaze of glory? Now what we're beginning to understand is that you can have your cake and eat it. We can do this. It is possible. And I've spent 27 years of my life trying to find out how to do that for this one here. I had a very good reason because I loved her. And I wanted to have her around. All right? And I wanted to do the best I could for her. Why shouldn't we have the same attitude for our customers? For the people who actually buy from us. And some of us may actually not get much credit from the customers because the customers aren't really understanding what's going on yet. But they will they'll match up with you. You'll win some of them over. And that will be important. Now let me go taste this thing for a moment, and then, because I'm 2 minutes over, which is an unforgivable sin.
I'm sure that's never happened before. So.
It can't. When you're on television, it can't happen.
Okay.
You're plus or minus 15 seconds. That's it. But, you know. So, feels like